to Good Game, the show for gamers by gamers. I'm Hex.
And I'm Bajo.
A big thank you to everyone who joined in our joust over which decade, the 80s, the 90s, or the noughties, had the biggest influence on gaming. And I think your opinions were about as divided as ours were.
Yes, which I think is a good thing.
Back to our regular format this week, however, as we take a look at Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate.
Plus, a very interesting game for tablets, Year Walk.
And the National Broadband Network, or NBN. It's a political hot potato, but what is it, who has it, and how will it affect our gaming? Goose investigates.
But first, can you guess the game for this week?
It's got a monster in it, but is that a clue or a red herring? We just don't know.
We don't know.
News.
News, your turn.
Me? Oh.
Yeah, I'm not going. I am comfy.
Good game.
Square Enix's president and representative director Yoichi Wada is stepping down. The demotion was part of a management reorganisation due to the company's poor performance and predicted extraordinary loss in its upcoming financial report.
Don't talk like that. We just gotta regroup.
Wada will be replaced by Yosuke Matsuda from late June. BioWare has announced that it will shut down the Asia-Pacific servers for Star Wars The Old Republic and merge players with North American servers. BioWare stated the decision was made based on feedback from players that they wish to play on servers with higher populations. No exact date was given for the shutdown, with the announcement simply saying it will take some time.
I wasn't planning to live forever anyway.
As always, April 1st brought with it a slew of jokes from the gaming industry. Eidos teased a new Deus Ex game called Human Defiance in the lead-up, only to reveal on the day a fake 8-bit game that we kind of wish was real.
New weapons. New augmentations. Deeper conspiracies.
That game company revealed new DLC for Journey, which featured a rocket deathmatch mode. And Mojang announced Minecraft 2, which looks a whole lot like Minecraft, except it features a new ultra-realistic graphics setting and hostile chickens that don't like being looked at.
Good game.
The Walking Dead has gone from successful comic book series to hit TV show to a rather excellent point-and-click adventure game. So does this new FPS survival instinct continue this streak of success?
Nothing can be done now.
In Survival Instinct, you play as Daryl Dixon, the crossbow-wielding badass from the TV show. Things kick off right from the start of the zombie apocalypse.
Sadly, there's not much story more than that to talk about. I mean, I'll throw in a spoiler warning here, I guess. Basically, you just head off to track down your brother Merle, you find him, then lose him again, and then finally you find him.
Them people locked me up for days in the dark with all them abominations.
It's totally devoid of that unpredictable plot and storytelling and characterization that the series is so well known for.
You stay put. You just slow me down right now.
They've got the actual actors in to voice the characters, which is always a tick, but to be honest, they don't have that much to work with.
Stay here.
What?
So what we're left with at the end of the day is a shallow and clunky shooter, but it still has some good ideas if poorly executed.
This is a solid attempt at a focus on resource management and scavenging, so it gets that survival horror element quite right. Ammo and health are scarce and zombies are everywhere, so you'll need to hunt down precious fuel to continue on your journey.
It's such a shame that the combat isn't more fun. Using guns is basically a death sentence because zombies will just pour in from nowhere. So your best option is to shove every zombie back, then run behind them for a quick execution. And that does get old pretty quickly.
There are some one-hit kill melee options you get later on, but they're slow and he should just be much better with his knife. It does make the prospect of fighting more than a few at a time seem almost impossible though, and that's how it should be.
Yeah, and it can get pretty scary, but that's mostly because you're just surrounded by all of these zombies doing that mini-game, and they are very considerate though. They will politely wait for you to finish this one before moving on to the next one.
Yeah, very considerate. This is trying to be a stealth game, really with a focus on distracting zombies and slipping by, but it's usually much more effective just to run through them and close a door in their face.
Things do pick up once you find the crossbow, but it is weird that they leave out his signature weapon for half of the game. And while we're talking about signature things, where was his bike? It's just so well known for this character to be riding a bike, and it's weird that this whole game is a road trip essentially and you never see it.
Yeah, I guess it's because during missions you're constantly running into other survivors and other vehicles that you can use. And each car has a certain number of spots for extra inventory items and passengers, so you'll have to leave someone behind if you have too many survivors. It's an interesting idea, but there's also zero emotional impact for making a big life or death decision like this. There's no sobbing plea for you to reconsider or angry shouts from the survivors as you leave them behind. It's simply a choice you make in a menu and then move on.
Let me come with you. Believe me, I will pull my weight.
Death by menu. I also found it a bit weird that even though I'm in a car which only has one spare seat and I've got a passenger in it, when I find Merle, he somehow manages to fit in the car. I just think it would have been much cooler to be in the front of a convoy on my bike while all the survivors are trailing behind me.
Yeah, but as you travel, you do have to decide which road to take. Do you choose the highway and save fuel but miss out on scavenging opportunities and have a greater chance of breaking down? Or do you take the slower back streets? You'll use more fuel but find more gear and won't break down as much.
I don't know what to say about it. Then don't. Leave it be.
You can also send out any survivors you have with you out on scavenging runs to look for fuel, food, or ammo at the start of missions. And you can help them out by giving them weapons, and having more survivors in their group will improve their chances. But their chances often aren't good, so you're likely just throwing a weapon away if you give one to them. And again, there just isn't much impact if anything does go wrong for them. They either just don't show up at the car, or they do show up as a zombie and you stab them anyway and move on.
There's not much else to the game, really. There is some replay value with modifiers such as being able to have the crossbow from the start or infinite ammo or different paths you can take, but I don't think many people would actually want to replay this game.
Well, we all know licensed titles often face tight budgets and production schedules, and I know it's not fair to compare this to a big AAA title, but sadly that's what it's going up against. I think there are some good ideas here, but it feels like they really didn't have the time or money to bring them to life, so I'm giving it 6.
I feel like saying only die-hard fans would enjoy this, but I actually think they would be the most disappointed because there isn't that much Walking Dead in this game. I'm going to give it 5.
I met Ken Levine, our creative director, at EB Games, at my old job, selling video games. And we hit it off, became friends, and he offered me a position as QA.
Hold on, and everything will be fine.
It's a little game called Lost. We more or less finished it, but never released it for a variety of reasons. It was a great opportunity for me to get my feet wet and to learn about the process and also get my hands dirty in design as well. I started messing around with the editor and help fix some bugs and do a little bit of design. So it was obviously it's tough when your game is never released. But there was a company who was able to take it and bring it to release in India. That was interesting, being able to see something you worked so closely on and to see a completely different cultural perspective. Yeah, so again, it's a very odd history and sort of work my way up from there.
Year Walk is a kind of puzzle story game by Swedish developers Sumogo. It's a kind of game where you really need a lot of time and patience and a quiet place where you can just sit down and really devote some time to nutting out this cryptic tale. You're about to embark on your first Year Walk, a magical and ancient practice performed by generations past in order to unlock the secrets of the future.
You'll need to have a pen and paper with you to jot down everything you come across by way of landmarks, symbols and patterns, because every little marking or animation you see is a clue to unlocking the next area.
You navigate the snowy landscape with simple swipes left and right, and a little white glowing mark at the top or bottom of the screen indicates when you can go up or down. A mysterious woman in a windmill, an eerie, haunting sensation, and creepy flashes of horror will be intriguing enough to have you hooked on figuring out this story.
At first I found myself getting frustrated with this because after the first few encounters I was just going around in circles. Losing my patience a little bit. But once you settle into that puzzle mind frame, you realize that you do need to be honing in on all those little details. And the more you do, the darker the story gets.
In addition to the game, you can also download the free companion app. But it doesn't initially appear to do a whole lot to help you apart from provide extra lore linked to the symbols you see and the characters you meet. But then there's a locked section on it that requires a passcode, and I knew I couldn't put this down until I figured out what that was about. What's in there? What's that about?
You actually find yourself locked out at every turn. Locked gates, strange locked boxes. So you set about the task of finding the keys and codes required to access these secrets. And through this, you'll start to piece together the haunting fragments of these Scandinavian mythical tales.
Yes, and all of a sudden the information in your companion app is a little bit more relevant, and yet nothing is glaringly obvious, which is good. In addition to keeping notes on what you see, I also found it helpful to record my path through the forest. Because while you can use certain landmarks to help guide your way, it's so easy to get lost and turned around.
You can imagine that year walking would actually be a bit like that, walking around in a confused mess. But there's a wonderful subtlety to this game. It gives you just enough to pique your interest and make you wonder, but then it makes it quite tricky for you to get to its core.
The art and sound design are appropriately chilling too, aren't they? And I just love a developer that uses a game as a medium to share a story like this. I mean, I had no idea what year walking was, but what a great way to learn about a culture's mythology. In the end, I found the idea of having a companion app quite clever. It's kind of like having an adventurer's notebook with you to reference, but also with secrets to unlock of its own.
This game does require a bit of patience, and it's not for everyone, but I like how different it is. I'm giving it 7.
I really thought that this reminded me of a PC game we reviewed a while back called Anna. It had that similar kind of pagan, spooky theme to it. This is much shorter, but still an interesting and very unique experience that's perfect for tablet, so I'm giving it 7.5.
Now, when the National Broadband Network was first announced, we were promised a bigger, better and faster internet.
Yet 4 years on, it's still a pipe dream for some, but not all. Goose investigates.
It's hard to imagine life without the internet, and with an increase in digital distribution and online games, it's never been more important to have a fast, stable connection with a large bandwidth. So in comes the National Broadband Network, one of the largest public infrastructure projects to ever be carried out in Australia.
We have an ageing telephone and broadband network in Australia, and it needs upgrading. So the current government have set in place a policy which we are rolling out at NBN Co, which is upgrading to the state-of-the-art fibre to the premise, fixed wireless and satellite technologies. And it means that we can take our broadband speeds from what we've got today, which is typically in the order of 12 megabits per second, up to really high-speed broadband of around 100 megabits per second and beyond.
We have seen the evolution of technologies over the last 5-10 years, and we're getting to a point now where we do need to keep pace with our international counterparts so that Australia remains competitive in the global environment.
Under the current plan, fibre will be directly rolled out to 93% of the premises in Australia. Right now, this connection is capable of reaching speeds of 100 megabits per second download and up to 40 megabits per second upload. The remaining 7% of the population will be receiving a mixture of fixed wireless coverage based on 4G technology and a full-term satellite service. Both will have maximum speeds of 25 megabits per second download and 5 megabits per second upload. If it all goes to plan, this should be finished by 2021. But the project is still in its early stages.
We currently have some 70,000 premises that are able to connect into the NBN. And right now we have some 800,000 premises that are in areas where construction is already underway.
So to test the NBN out for myself, I'm off to the coastal town of Kiama. 2 hours south of Sydney, with a population just under 20,000, home to beautiful beaches, tasty ice creameries, fish and chips, the famous Kiama blowhole, and now one of the first sites selected for the National Broadband Network.
I think as being one of the first release sites was because of the basalt rock and the blue metal gravel, and they wanted to test different drilling equipment and technologies in creating ducting and running the cable through the rock. And at the moment it's still being implemented and rolled out through the community. We were lucky enough to get into our council administration building, but from there we used our own dark fibre which connects it to the libraries. It's due to be about June, July this year that the CBD of Kiama will be rolled out, and then also we'll have our other remote sites that will then be able to utilise the NBN connections.
So a general speed test through the NBN connection showed that we're getting a dramatic increase in the download speed, but what was more surprising was how fast the uploads were.
The top speeds would probably be about 11 megabytes per second, and if you had a 1 or 2 gig file, it'd probably take you 1 or 2 minutes to download that.
Now, speed tests can only tell us so much about an internet connection. Let's see how the NBN handles games.
So after many years spent playing online games on an ADSL connection, the NBN helps a lot. Primarily, I'd say, DLCs for games and the speed it takes to download the DLCs. There's no 5-hour waits anymore, it's pretty much instant, really.
Well, in a game of Counter-Strike, I'm not noticing a big difference. It seems to be running just as fast as it did back in the office. But one thing to take note of is my ping, which is running at 4, the lowest out of anyone else I'm versing.
Typically with online gaming, yeah, the speed improvements helped a lot. The fibre connection helps drive down the ping times, and noticing that on most servers you connect to, it does help with local connections. The other one, playing any PC game, some of the servers can have custom content, and downloading that is usually pretty fast now, considering before there was up to, say, 5 to 10 minutes before you could join a server.
Let's go, let's go!
Definitely with multiple users in the household, you don't find as much lag, whereas previously, like on an ADSL connection, as soon as one other person jumps on, you get spikes in your ping and your latency, and basically it becomes unplayable. It does still occur, but not to the extent that it does on ADSL.
Time to turn on the lights.
We have lots of people that work from the library. They might work in Sydney a few days a week, but they actually come down to the library here and use the NBN and this sort of community facility, and if they have to move large files around for their work, they'll come down in here because they know they can do it so much quicker. Also, we've been able to connect to the National Museum down in Canberra and participate in some of their programs, so it just makes communities in regional Australia be able to explore some of these other things that we can't get to easily.
NBN Co is just a wholesaler, so if you want to connect, you'll have to contact an ISP. And like current internet plans, you'll pay more for speed and bandwidth. Areas like Kiama have clearly benefited from the NBN, but it's an experience that may not be shared by others in the future. Due to the large scale of the project, the type of rollout will depend on which political party is in federal government.
So what the coalition is saying, Malcolm Turnbull has 2 key points. He says the government is spending way too much money on this thing, and consumers will need to bear the brunt of this at some point. The second problem Malcolm Turnbull has with the NBN is that he thinks it's going too slowly. And by the NBN's own measures, it is going too slowly. So Malcolm's proposal is that instead of building fibre to the home for the vast majority of places around Australia, he's going to build fibre to the node. In terms of, talking about gaming, and things that we use at the moment, like high-definition movies and videos online, Turnbull's proposal is perfectly adequate for that. What the government is saying is that's fine, but in 5 and 10 years' time, is it still going to be adequate?
There needs to be some kind of upgrade path if you are going to deploy fibre to the node during an interim period, but you need to do that in a fairly well-planned way, that you're not building networks today that you need to spend very significant amounts of dollars on tomorrow to upgrade them to fibre. But I think there is advantage on the flip side to getting faster broadband out to more people around Australia sooner rather than later.
Originally, the government said that we would have 1.2 million premises passed by June 2013. What passed means is basically the fibre has run down the street, but it's not connected. And then now they've revised it down into about 190,000. To be fair to the government, there was a delay of about 9 months in the negotiations with Telstra to buy their copper network.
It's really impossible to build instantaneously across Australia. It's a massive project, so we do have to do a staggered rollout. We've taken into a whole host of factors and considerations. So where can we easily build? Where are the nodes that we start building and then build out from that?
High-speed broadband is something that is everybody's been asking for. The end game being fibre is absolutely essential for Australia. How soon we get there and how we go about deploying the network, I guess that's the next kind of debate, and we're seeing that at the moment in relation to the 2 policies from different sides of politics.
The NBN is a long-term project, and one that many of us may not get to experience until a couple more years down the track. And when we do, it may not even be the technology promised at the moment. But once it does come into place, hopefully there are new games that can fully take advantage of its speed, bandwidth, and stability.
Good game.
Thanks, Goose. Well, it's been 3 whole years since we reviewed Monster Hunter Tri for the Wii, and now it's time for us to review it again.
Well, that's not strictly true, Bajo. Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate is not just a high-def remake for the Wii U and the 3DS. It's a complete overhaul. Over 50 different boss monsters now, over 300 quests, as well as loads of tweaks under the hood. It's similar to Capcom's fighting game updates. There are a lot of familiar faces, but beneath the surface, it's a whole different animal.
First, a bit of perspective. Monster Hunter is basically a national obsession in Japan. It's inspired a whole subgenre of co-op games such as Soul Sacrifice and God Eater.
As the name implies, you control a professional hunter of monsters. It can take a while to track down your quarry in this sprawling, slightly strange fantasy wilderness, but once you do, the real game begins, for Monster Hunter is all about drawn-out, tense boss fights.
These dragons are super freaky. They move fast, hit hard, and their attack patterns seem overwhelming at first. Dying is a part of the learning process, but it's still humiliating when you're dragged back to base with your bum in the air.
But when you do learn a monster's moves, the tide turns and the fights become more cathartic.
Ah, you thought this was a mud hole, Mr. Baroth. But no, it's an operating table, and I'm the surgeon.
They've bumped the number of weapon classes up to 12 in Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate, although half of them are recycled from the PSP classic Monster Hunter Freedom Unite. I'm always partial to a bit of archery, so I was happy to see that bows are better suited to solo play now, thanks to a handy vertical barrage attack. And the new explosive slime element works well. The more arrows that strike, the greater the chance of a chain reaction.
I'm so glad the dual swords are back. I love to get my Kratos on. And if you prefer to tank your way through, then the gun lance beckons. The variety of weapons is a big feature. If something gets a bit stale, you just switch to another one.
I really like the way they rebalanced the hunting horn class. Aside from the absurd kick you get from belting a wyvern with a giant harmonica, you can be a credit to the team with your buffs. Let me play you the song of my people.
This is a weird game. All the Monster Hunter games have a bit of a weird vibe to them, but that's kind of half of the charm. But before we get any further, let's talk graphics. The 3DS text is a little bit off, and also while the Wii U version has a high-def engine, the textures and character models all look suspiciously low-def. As do some of the environments, and worse yet, a lot of the textures look like they've simply been ripped from the 3DS version. The first time I saw those textures, Hex, I had to go use the ABC emergency eye wash station.
You don't have an emergency eye wash station. Were you just crying in the bathroom?
I was just crying in the bathroom.
It's not that bad.
It's not that great either. And it should be.
But the monsters do look so intimidating, thanks in part to the self-shadowing in the lighting engine. But the more important issue is how it all plays. Capcom has refined the combat, but hasn't messed with the core gameplay.
Yeah, about that, there is so much that you have to learn from forums and friends and trial and error, and while that can be a really good thing, I always find it a little bit too much to get my head around with the Monster Hunter games. Take this guy, the Duramboros. He's so big that if you melee him, it's hard to see what the heck you're doing, but venture out with a ranged weapon instead, and he just turns into a huge punching bag.
Even then, that tail attack. There are quite a few new features like the ultra-difficult G-rank quest tier, and if you own both the 3DS and Wii U versions of the game, you can transfer your save back and forth, which is fantastic. There's also quite a limited lock-on feature now, but I actually prefer the precision of manual camera control, I think.
You can also put potions and things on the Wii U gamepad, but it's a bit of a gimmick, really. I do like the progression of the game, though. You unlock abilities by upgrading your gear.
I just think this world has so much personality. I mean, why are there cats that cook for you? I don't know, but I like it.
And what's with the buff recipes? I'll have some salty milk with my thorned meat.
Ooh. And what's with this pig? I mean, he doesn't do anything except for that cute little dance.
Yeah. There is a lot of attention to detail here. The ecosystems, the landscape, it makes it feel like a nature doco at times. Except instead of a lion stalking a gazelle, it's you who's taking down these noble beasts. It makes me stop and think, Hex, are we the real monsters here?
No.
I think we are. I see a lot of similarities to my beloved Dark Souls here, but also, this is one peculiar game. There's a lot of pre-quest prep and item box fiddling, and some of those random quest rewards are maddening. For a game that's supposedly all about skill, it does feel like a slot machine at times. It would take hundreds of hours to collect all of the gear in this game.
Yeah, and that would be frustrating if collecting was the goal, but the real reward here isn't the loot. It's learning how to teach those dragons a lesson. The real reward of Monster Hunter is satisfaction. Look, there is a staggering amount of content in 3 Ultimate, and I think fans will go absolutely nuts on it. If you can find a good, solid group of co-op buddies, then this could really keep you entertained for a while, so I'm giving it 8.5 out of 10.
I absolutely agree with you, but I find it odd and maddening, so I'm giving it 7 out of 10.
Piggy disagrees.
Good game.
So did you guess the game?
For this week.
It was Monster Hunter Freedom, which was the first in the franchise to be released on a handheld console, the PSP, way back in 2006.
We'll be back next week with another hefty dose of gaming analysis with the latest Army of 2 game, The Devil's Cartel. Over on Spawn Point this weekend, we see if Lego City Underground delivers on its promise of being a great game for the Wii U.
And just a friendly reminder, for the gamer on the go, you can catch Good Game Pocket Edition 8:20 PM on ABC2 on Saturdays, which is a weekly wrap-up of everything we talk about and do.
Whew, so many shows. Good Game taking over the ABC. Till next time, may all your games be good ones. Hex out.
Bajo out.
I wonder how many people watch all 3 of them.
I watch all 3 of them. At
Really?
once. Yep.
At the same time.
I've moved my bedroom now into the main living room, so now my bedroom is actually my gaming room. Basically, it means I have a room of technology, so I have like 4 or 5 screens all on at once in one.
Do you ever just put your face on all of them?
All the time.
That's
Yep.
horrifying.
In fact, my screen, my desktop background changes every few minutes, and quite often it flicks to my face.
It's like a haunted mansion of Bajo.
It does it here at the ABC too, and sometimes
I know, I've seen it.
when
My desk is next to yours.
when I'm getting IT support and I'm remote desktopic and they can just see my face coming up. I'm like, sorry about that. Especially with like 4 or 5 in a row. Different.